What is happening, guys? Welcome back to Redbeard's Garage, and this is the Road to Horsepower. You might have watched our last episode where we talked about stroker kits and how they can help you make more power and what all the parts are that makes up a stroker kit. And we went over everything like how to measure deck height and all kinds of information. So if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend watching it before this one because it's going to get you familiarized if you're not already with the whole stroker kit scene. Can't believe we ain't been stroking engines earlier. But with EC, they have a ton of stroker kits, so make sure to check out the links in the video description. We'll have everything that we're using in today's video and also some other stroker kits located down there. Today, we're going to take the Ghost engine. We have taken a Ghost in the past when it first came out. We did a full all-out build on it, and I do agree with you guys. We went a little too wild on that build. Basically, the only thing we kept with that build was the block and the crank. Literally, that's all we kept. So with this one, we want to keep it, authentic, and we're going to do a Super Ghost 223 where we keep the head, we keep, of course, the block. We're going to be swapping out the rotating assembly, but we're going to keep a lot more that makes this a Ghost. So to do that, we're going to use EC's 58 millimeter stroker crank. This is pre-clearance to help us clear the compression release on the cams. So that's going to help us in time in building this engine. They do have a write-up where you can see all about where you might run into problems with the compression release on cams, so make sure to check out the link if you're having problems with that on your build. It can help you to be able to solve that. With that comes EC's forged rod. We also went through what the difference is between billet and forged, and since forged is the best way to go, of course EC making some of the most high quality parts on the market for these engines, they went with the forged rod, so we're going to be using that in this build. We're also going to upgrade from that stock dish piston. We're going to keep it 70 millimeter, but we're going to go to the flat top a Wildcat piston. This piston has less material on the bottom side, so it'll clear the counterweights on the crank, and it's a real good option to go for in the Ghost. For our cam, we're going to go with the Dyno Cam's CM224 cam. This is a good cam. It's 265 lift. It's really good for yard carts and mini bikes. 265 lift is about our favorite all-around good cam, so that's what we're going to be going with, and hopefully we don't have any clearance problems with this stroker kit. If we do run into any, we will show you guys and how to overcome that. We are going to be upgrading from this very small carb. These carbs that come with these Ghosts are a pretty cheap carb. They work okay, but you're never going to make no real power with them, so we're going to be upgrading to the WC22. One big thing to say is EC is, originally a carb company. They know everything there is to know about carburetors and how to tune them for maximum performance. So when you buy either a PZ22 or the WC22, they're not just an off-the-shelf Chinese carb. They've handcrafted these carbs to be as best as they can, and they're working on them constantly. Like this is a new version of it that has better startups, so you're going to have less headache with starting these engines. So they're really tuning these carbs. They're not off the shelf, so they're not the same thing you're going to get from other retailers or Amazon or something. They're a better version of that. Since we're going with more lift, of course, we need some heavier valve springs. We're going with some 26-pound springs, and we're going to go ahead and upgrade to their stainless valves that EC offers, as well as their billet retainers and split keepers. So that's just going to make everything a lot better. So while we're dyno in this engine, we're going to dyno with the stock head first, and then we're going to dyno with the ported head that I'm going to port off camera and see the difference between stock port if you didn't touch the head, and then what a good port job will do with this whole stroker kit. So make your guesses in the comment section below of what you think the horsepower and torque will be of this engine. I'm curious to see what you guys think, and then we'll see who's right at the end of the video. So let's jump into this build and get to stroking out this Ghost and turning it from a Ghost to a Super Ghost. First, I'm going to remove the carb, flywheel cover, coil, and the flywheel. Next, remove the heat shields, valve cover, and valve train and the head. Now we can take off the crank cover to remove the cam, lifters, and unbolt the rod cap to remove the piston and rod from the block. Now slide out the crank to have a fully disassembled block. On rbgcarts.com, we sell this valve spring removal and installation tool set. First, place the rubber mat under the valve to support it, then take the removal tool with the hollow side and press down firmly on the valve retainer. This will compress the spring and allow the keepers to fall out. We're going to have to lap our new stainless steel valves. Place some valve grinding compound on the edge of the valve and install it into the head. I use hot glue to hold my lapping tool onto the valve. Spin the valve in the head to mate the two surfaces. Make sure when done to thoroughly clean the head and the valve before installation. To reinstall the valve setup, we can place the rubber mat under the valve to support it. Assemble the valve springs with the keepers in the retainer. Now we can use the valve installation tool with the spring-loaded tip. Line it up on the keepers and firmly press down to snap the keepers into the retainer. The heavier the valve spring, the harder this will be to install. This kit is a must-have for engine builders. On the jug side of the block, there's a small hole in between the lifters. This hole allows oil to flow back down into the block from the head. I like to drill this hole out to 5/16 inch. Once drilled, make sure to clean all the metal from the block. Next, I'm going to check several spots on the crank to make sure the crank journal is the right size for our new rod. This crank measures perfect at 1.180 inches, so we can proceed with this build. Now we can dress out our new piston by installing the rings. The oil spacer is first, followed by the oil scraper rings on both sides of the spacer. Next is the second compression ring, which is black in color, then the silver ring on top. Make sure to face the letters up. Make sure to orientate the rings 120 degrees apart. Snap the wrist pin clip in one side of the piston and make sure to orientate the arrows on the piston on the dipper side of the rod. Oil the journals on the piston and the rod and slide in the wrist pin. Now we can snap in that last wrist pin clip. Insert the rod bearings by lining up the tank with the notch. Use assembly lube on the rings and bearings. Slide on the piston ring compressor. Slide the piston into the block with the arrow facing down and tap the piston into the block with the handle of a hammer. Install the rod cap with the dipper side down and snug up the bolts. Torque the rod to 60 inch-pounds. Then alternate from bolt to bolt, going up 15 inch-pounds at a time until reaching 150 inch-pounds. You can see that our new rod is making contact with the top of the jug. We can take out a small amount of material with a Dremel for clearance. After a little grinding, you can see that we now have clearance, so I can reinstall the crank and the rod using the same methods as before. We can now oil and slide in both lifters. Now we can install the cam and make sure to line up the dots on the cam and the crankshaft for correct timing. Install the side cover and torque to 20 foot-pounds. Install the dowels, head gasket, and the head and torque it to 20 foot-pounds. Now we can install the valve train and set the valve lash to 3/1000ths of an inch. I need to remove the flywheel key to lap the new flywheel. Once we have this lapped, make sure to clean up all the lapping compound from the crank as well as the flywheel before installing. Reinstall the key, flywheel, starter cup, and nut and torque down to 65 foot-pounds. We can now set our coil gap to 40/1000ths of an inch by sliding a filler gauge in between the coil and the magnet on the flywheel and tightening down the coil. Spin the flywheel to expel the filler gauges. Install the heat shield and the flywheel cover. Remove the stock carb studs by backing two nuts against each other. Now we can install the carb adapter and the WC22 carburetor. The last piece of this build is always AMSOIL break-in oil. Links to our AMSOIL dealer is located in the video's description. We will break the engine in on the dyno and then switch over to Dominator Racing Oil for our dyno pull. Now we can remove the stock head and dyno this ported head. You can see I made the transitions cleaner and the ports a bit wider. This should significantly increase the flow on this head. All right, so we made, what was it, 16, almost 16 and a half horsepower?
16.2, I think you said.
That was a huge gain in power. 16 and a half and then 13 and a half foot-pounds of torque, I think. So we have the Super Ghost 223cc and did the 265 cam. We got stock rockers, stock everything else, basically imported head and a carb. So long as it's gonna go hog dog it around the woods and then top speed it right down the road. So this is gonna be real nice. See how good it starts. We haven't started it. Did you hook up the kill switch?
I didn't.
I didn't either. All right, we'll be fine. A little bit. Oh yeah! Burn the road up, Rick.
Ah, branch kicked it. I didn't even see that. All right. So what you do? On the way back.
Oh, I'm gonna guess. So we're at a 5-to-1 gearing ratio, I believe. That's what these bikes come stock. They got a 50 tooth.
Screenshot it.
I'm gonna say 58.
Exactly.
Really?
58, yeah.
Hey, 58. You did screenshot it?
Yep.
So 58 miles per Super Ghost. We got a 19-inch tire with 5-to-1 gearing ratio. That's decent.
So even on the steep uphill, I was still at like 55, 56.
Oh, so it didn't bog much.
It bogged a little.
So we let Lonnie. He's out of state right now. We let Lonnie.
He's back at war.
You told me your name like I don't know it. You said Lonnie. I make jokes all the time saying like Ronnie, right? But I mean, my weight, this is the horsepower limit for 5-to-1. No matter what you do, you're going to start burning belts if you're heavier guy. Did you feel it slip any with you? I'd say on a hard takeoff he may, but I'm double Lonnie. It's embarrassing to say a little bit, but
I'm a skinny guy.
It is. Jesus made me this way. No, cheeseburgers did, but strict diet and lifestyle change, you can probably fix that. But that's pretty impressive, old Super Ghost. So now let's recap on what we've gained, and we'll see the actual percentages over stock, because this thing made about 9 horsepower. So we're up like 7, almost 8 horsepower with this build.
Almost 50%.
Yeah, that's huge for the old Super Ghost. So we made some pretty big numbers with this engine build. These stroker kits are the way to go. So basically, if you have a 212, you want to make some good power, you should honestly start with a stroker kit when you get into, truly building the engine. Normally we'd have the engine sitting up here with us, but it's still on the bike because I haven't even rode it yet because we're about to go out of town. Only Lonnie's rode this thing, so I can't wait to get back. We're going to do some riding on our mini bike. So we just have the stock head here that we didn't port sitting up here, but made some massive numbers. So when we compare the non-ported head 223cc stroker kit to the stock numbers, it's pretty big gains. Of course, we started at 9.90 horsepower, and with the stock ported head with the stroker kit, we was making 14.67 horsepower, and that is a gain of 4.77 horsepower, 48% more horsepower. Those are big numbers for, not really going crazy with this build. Then torque was 12.85 after the build, and that's up from 11.61, so that's 1.24 foot-pounds of torque more, 10.5% gain in torque. So you're going to feel these numbers pretty big. I mean, that's a pretty big jump, and we can still go further with this engine. This was just wanted to use it at face value of how EC is going to kind of put the kit together, and so we didn't do nothing really insane. And I'm no professional at porting heads, so the port numbers, I understand how the head should flow. You can just kind of look at how the air is coming in and going out and try to enhance that flow of air. So when we compare to the ported head, this is when the numbers are even better. Like we saw some big gains with that port job. So with the ported head and the 223cc build, we made 16.31 horsepower, and that is up 1.64 horsepower over the stock head with the 223, and that's up 6.41 horsepower over stock engine. Those are huge gains at 65% over stock, 11% over stroker kit with the stock head. Then if we look at torque, we made 13.64. That's 0.79 foot-pounds of torque more than the 223 with the stock head, 6% gain. Then when we look at over stock engine, we made 2.03 foot-pounds of torque. That's 17.5% over stock. So some big numbers with this setup. Highly recommended a stroker kit if you have a 212 engine. If you have a Hemi or a Ducar, it doesn't matter. You should be stroking it to a 223. And really the next step would be you could bore it out to a 72, but I don't think there's enough material in the jug to bore out that much. You might have to step up to something like a Tilson block or something to get, even crazier numbers. But we're going to keep on pushing this road to horsepower, keep on making more power and teaching you guys new things on how to make power. We're going to break down everything about these engines in the series, so make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to check out the links in the video description for every part we use. We're going to also put the other stroker kits that EC has available. And big shout out to EC for sending out the parts to do this video. Road to horsepower is about to get pretty crazy. We got some cool stuff in the works coming out, so stay tuned for that. So let us know what you think of this 223cc Super Ghost build. Make sure to stay tuned on our social media, where we're going to be doing something with this engine very soon. So make sure to follow us on Instagram as well as Facebook to stay notified for that. One of you guys can own this engine is all I'm going to say right now. So stay tuned for that. So thank you guys so much for watching. We say keep on making some horsepower. We love you, and God bless.